Yes, my people, it is your boy VRD, and welcome to part 2 of this commentated drive from Selhurst Depot to London Victoria. In part 1, we took a Class 377 Electro Star out of Selhurst Depot up to just south of Norwood Junction, then changed ends and drove southwards towards Selhurst. In part 2, we're going to be continuing from Selhurst up to London Victoria, calling at all stations. So, let's get into it. Right, so we've been prompted to close our doors. We're going to quickly take a glance at these CCTV monitors here. Although they're not functional, as I've said before, I like to glance at them as if they were functional, just to build up a good habit. Checking our signal, it is green. We're going to press the door close button. Once those two door close buttons light up, we know that our doors are closed and locked. We now take a final glance at the CCTV monitors as well as the signal. F&R switch into forward, and I'm taking power notch 1. I didn't use the hill start button there because we are currently on a downward gradient, but I still avoid taking notches of power. Sorry, let me word that properly. I avoided taking a notch of power until the brake cylinder gauge reading was between 0 and 1 bar. That's when I can go into power notch 1, and then once it falls all the way to 0, I can go into the other power notches. So I've selected power notch 2 here, just to bring us up to 30 miles an hour. Now that we're at 30 miles an hour, I'm going to shut off the power, acknowledge this AWS warning here that is regarding a speed reduction down to 40 miles an hour. I'm now going to make a brake step 2 application very briefly, just to bring our speed down by 10 miles an hour. Then releasing the brakes and taking power notch 3. That is known as a running brake test, and you perform that at the start of every trip. So the speed limit was 40 miles an hour leaving Selhurst. It's now gone up to 60 miles an hour, but it reduces back down to 40 miles an hour just before our next station, which is Thornton Heath. So I'm now going to make a brake step 1 application here. You want to be aiming to enter these platforms at between 30 and 25 miles an hour. So if you were looking closely enough, you would have seen the 40 board there just at ground level. I was in brake step 1, but I've momentarily increased it to brake step 2, back down to brake step 1. And the stopping position for 8 carriage trains here at Thornton Heath is about 2 carriage lengths away from the end of the platform. There's no actual marker board for it, but I just happen to know where it is. And brake step 1 for the stop. Always aim to come to a stand with brake step 1 selected, because it helps the train stop smoothly without a jolt. Brake step 3 into neutral, doors on the left. So yeah, as I said before, I'm not going to call out every single action I'm doing, because this is just a very intense run with a high workload. It will get quite overwhelming if I'm calling out every single action I'm doing, but I'll call out most of them. Okay, glancing at our signal and CCTV monitors, pressing the door close button. Door interlock lights have illuminated. Glancing at the monitors and the signal, F&R switch into forward, power notch 1, power notch 2, and full power. Speed limit is 40 miles an hour, raising to 60 miles an hour. Next station is Norbury. Another thing you also want to do is just glance at the monitors as you're pulling away. That's something that I forgot to do at Selhurst and Thornton Heath. But yeah, take another glance at the monitors as your train begins moving, just to ensure that no one's being dragged along with you for the ride. So I'm going to aim to be using primarily brake step 1 when coming into these stations, but I will be using brake step 2 as well every now and then. So we're up to 60 miles an hour. I'm moving the PBC back into the off position. And just before we enter this left hand curve, I'm going to make a brake step 1 application for Norbury Station. And the stopping position at Norbury Station in this direction, in fact in both directions, is at the end of the platform. So we're aiming to be travelling at 30 miles an hour on entry into the station. Down to 40, 35, 32 and a half into the station, which is fine. And as we get about midway along the platform, I'm going to make a brief brake step 2 application, reduce it back down to brake step 1, back up to brake step 2 again very briefly, down to brake step 1, final burst of brake step 2, down to brake step 1, releasing momentarily, and I'm just going to aim to come to a stand with this gate here, this railing I should say, in the left porthole window. That is a perfect stop. Full service, neutral, doors on the left. Full service, if you hear me say full service, I'm referring to brake step 3. That's just another form of terminology you can use there. I'm also going to open the windows in fact, because it is quite a nice day in real life and in game. The game time isn't too far off from real time in fact. I think they're less than an hour apart. Right, green signal, glance at the monitors, door close button. Door interlock lights illuminated. Final glance of the monitors and the signal. F&R switch into forward. And I'm going to use the hill start button just to move off there. Power notch 1 initially and straight up into full power. And again, I forgot to take the final glance at the monitors when moving off. I'm gonna do it at the next station. I promise. Next station is Streatham Common. The speed limit reduces to 45 miles an hour just before entering that station. Once we get up to about 50 miles an hour, I'm going to make a brake step 1 application. So I've shut off the power here at 50 miles an hour. At this AWS magnet associated with this signal coming up, that's a good place to make your brake step 1 application for Streatham Common Station. There's the 45 mile an hour board now. And we're doing 25 miles an hour on entry into Streatham Common Station, which is perfect. We may actually be able to remain in brake step 1 up until our stopping position. Stopping position is not too far away from the end of the platform here. I'm momentarily releasing the brakes because we're decelerating a bit too much. Back into brake step 1. And the 8 carriage stopping position is the second stop board up here, not the first one. So I'm just bouncing between brake step 1 and off, and up to brake step 1 for the stop. Perfect. Full service, neutral, doors on the left. And you can see our signal here is displaying a main aspect only. If you had the 5 white lights pointing diagonally upwards to the right, that means you've been routed onto the Streatham Spur, I think it's called, and that takes you up to Streatham Station. So this is Streatham Common Station, then Streatham Station is up in that direction, about a mile away. And then you also have Streatham Hill Station, which is not far from here, but kind of far. But yeah, this would take you up towards London Bridge. It's quite a complex network in the South London area. Anyway, we are starting to run a bit late, so I'm gonna drive a bit more aggressively. Glancing at the signal, Glance at the monitors, whack the door close button, door interlock lights illuminated. Glancing at the monitors and the signal again. Forward, power notch 1, straight up into full power as soon as the brake cylinder gauge reading falls to 0. And glancing at the monitors again as we move off. Speed limit is now increasing to 60 miles an hour. So we're up to 60 miles an hour. I'm going to move the PBC into the off position. And our speed should be maintained at around 60 miles an hour because we're traveling on fairly level terrain here. Next station is Balham, but before Balham station we have a speed reduction down to 40 miles an hour. So we're going to pass the warning board associated with that speed reduction in a sec. Here it is coming up now. You can see the yellow triangle with the number 40 in it. And because I'm driving a bit more aggressively than normal, I'm going to brake harder and later than I normally would. So around now I'm going to make a brake step 2 application, and that should bring us down for the 40 mile an hour speed limit. Just reducing that to brake step 1 and releasing as we are down to 40 miles an hour, just in time for the commencement of the speed limit. If you weren't driving as aggressively, you would make your brake step 1 application just before entering that left hand curve. Speed limit's now increased to 60 miles an hour again, and here we are at Balham station. I've made a brake step 1 application, and that had us down to about 32 miles an hour for the entry into the station. And we're on a bit of a downward gradient here, so I'm making a brake step 2 application midway along the platform, remaining in brake step 2 for longer than normal. And we can't actually see the stopping position because the platform is on the other side, but these TPWS grids in the track here are a good form of reference to use. Yep, there we go. Perfect stop. Full service, neutral, crossing the cab this time because the platform is on the other side, and activating the door buttons on this side instead. And that is good practice. A lot of what I learned is from other YouTubers, other railway YouTubers. I'm not going to say any names, but yeah, you guys can probably tell who I've learned a lot of my railway knowledge from, who I got a lot of my railway knowledge from, I should say. Bad wording on my part. And we are running to time again, which is perfect. So, green signal, checking the monitors, whacking the door close button. When you're sitting down, you don't have to get up and cross the cab. Sorry, what did I just say? When you're closing the doors, I beg your pardon, you don't have to get up and cross the cab. But when you're opening them, definitely get up and cross the cab if the platform is on that side. Green signal, checking the monitors, forward, power notch 1, and glancing at the monitors again as we pull off full power. We're on a downward gradient, so I didn't bother using the hill start button. Next station is Wandsworth Common, which is very close to Balham. I believe it's the shortest distance between 2 stations on this route. Speed limit is 60 miles an hour. I'm going to shut off the power now, just above 40 miles an hour, and make my brake step 1 application. We're on a steep downward gradient still, heading into Wandsworth Common, so our brakes are not going to be as effective as they normally would be. We're aiming for between 25 and 30 miles an hour entering Balham here. Sorry, Wandsworth Common, not Balham. Oh my gosh. Just upping the braking force to brake step 2 midway along the platform. Back down to brake step 1 as we get closer towards the end of the platform, which is the stopping position for 8 carriage trains here at Wandsworth Common. And just bouncing between brake steps 1 and 2, releasing momentarily back up to brake step 1 to help us achieve a nice and controlled stop. Full service, neutral, doors on the left. Okay, so this is actually going fairly well, this commentary run. A lot better than my attempt last night. That was absolutely atrocious. I was just butchering the commentary. I was so exhausted. I was honestly a mess. I couldn't, I just couldn't keep up with everything. But yeah, I've got a fresh brain now, so this is flowing a lot better than I was actually expecting. Green signal, glancing at the monitors, pressing the door close button. Door interlock lights have illuminated. A final glance of the monitors and the signal. Forward, power notch 1. Glancing at the monitors again, and full power. Next station is Clapham Junction, which is quite some distance away from here. However, we do have a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit just before entering Clapham Junction station, so it is important to keep that in mind. You do get a warning board for it. So speed limit is still 60 miles an hour. We're probably just going to be able to reach 60 miles an hour before we need to get the brakes in for Clapham Junction. So up to 55, up to 60, and just as we enter this right hand curve, I'm going to make a brake step 1 application. And it turns out there wasn't actually a warning board for the reduction down to 20 miles an hour. I thought there was, but I guess there isn't. So brake step 1 seems to be doing its job at the moment. This signal coming up, the 5 white lights pointing diagonally upwards to the right, if those were illuminated, you'd be routed into Clapham Junction platform 16. Just increasing the braking force up to brake step 2 momentarily, just to help bring us down for the 20 limit. I think we entered it doing a bit more than 20 miles an hour, but that's alright. We're down to 20 now, so I've released the brakes, entering Clapham Junction here. Yeah, the 5 white lights that pointing diagonally upwards to the right, if those were illuminated, you'd be routed into Clapham Junction platform 16, and then onwards onto the West London line, so Kensington Olympia, Shepherd's Bush, all of that. It's a very interesting section of track. But anyway, just using brake step 2 momentarily there, back down to brake step 1, and again bouncing between those 2 braking forces to help us achieve a nice controlled stop here at the end of the platform at Clapham Junction. Brake step 3, neutral, doors on the left. You can see that this signal is fitted with an RA indicator, and although the RA indicators are not functional in train sim world, I do sometimes like to imagine them as being functional. I'm not going to do that while I'm recording, but that is something I do when I'm driving by myself. I mean, I'm driving by myself now, but you know what I mean. And we're actually keeping to time, which is quite impressive. So, green signal, checking the monitors, pressing the door close button. In real life, you have platform dispatchers here at Clapham Junction, so I guess you could imagine their presence as well if you're going for realism, but because I'm recording, I'm not going to bother doing that. Door interlock lights have illuminated. Checking the monitors again. Green signal. Forward. Power notch 1. And because we are in a 20 mph speed limit zone, I'm only going to take notch 2 of power for now. Although the speed limit is increasing to 60 mph, we have to wait for the full length of our train to be clear of that board before accelerating up to that speed. So we're up to 15 mph. I am reducing the power percentage down to 25%, also known as power notch 1. I'm not sure why I said that. And if you were paying attention, you would have seen we had a warning board for a speed reduction down to 45 mph. So what I'm actually going to do is select power notch 3 on the PBC and accelerate up to 45 mph. By the time we reach 45 mph, the speed limit should be 45 mph. So up to 35. Up to 45, and I'm selecting the off position on the PBC. And it was very hard to make out, but we did. Oh no, never mind. Now we've passed it. We passed the board with the number 45 on it, telling us that our speed limit has now reduced to 45 mph. And we're now entering an upward gradient here. This is gonna take us over the southwestern mainland over there. And Battersea Park Station is at the top of this upward gradient. So I'm not going to bother applying any more power. I'm just going to let gravity do its thing and gradually reduce our speed. I'm aiming for a speed of 25, between 20 and 25 miles an hour entering Battersea Park Station. And that is because it is on a severe downward gradient in this direction. We're traveling upwards at the moment, but it's going to change. We're going to hit the summit in a second and it's going to become a very steep downward gradient. So I'm applying the brakes from now. Just the brake step 1 application down to 25 for the entry into the station, but I am going to need to use brake step 2 momentarily. Just going to do that about now, reducing it back down to brake step 1, up to brake step 2 again, back down to brake step 1, just coming to a nice and controlled stop here. Brake step 1 again, and just looking for that. There we go, putting that stop board right in the drop light window there. That is how you want to be stopping ideally. Full service neutral doors on the left. I've actually messed up as well. What I should have done was pressed the door release button instead of the all release button, because that opens the front 4 carriages, the doors on the front 4 carriages only. The reason why I wanted to do that was because Battersea Park Station can only hold, I believe it's 7 carriages. So yeah, as you can see, the back carriage is not completely on the platform, but the doors have still opened. In real life, this is done automatically, so the train will know this and it will only open the front 8 carriages, sorry, the front 7 carriages, and the back carriage won't open. But in Train Sim World, you only have control of the front 4 carriages. I hope that made sense. Anyway, green signal, glancing at the monitors, pressing the door close button. Door interlock lights have illuminated, glancing at the monitors and the signal final time. Forward, power notch 1, then power notch 3, and glancing at the monitors, a final time. Next station is London Victoria. We made it. And I'm probably going to record the return journey for this tomorrow maybe. I'll probably edit this one later today. And we've got a double yellow signal coming up here. I just acknowledged the alert for the automatic warning system regarding that. So up to 45 miles an hour, I've shut off power now because that is the speed limit at the moment. Now at this AWS magnet here, I'm going to make a brake step 1 application. And we have a single yellow signal here, so I'm going to momentarily increase the braking force to brake step 2. And that is because I'm anticipating a red signal on the approach to London Victoria Station here. And this AWS magnet here associated with the red signal, I don't want to be doing above 20 miles an hour traveling over that. So we're doing 15 miles an hour at the moment, so that is perfect. So I know a lot of you have probably entered London Victoria Station in real life. If you've ever had to wait outside of the station momentarily, this is the reason why. You have a red signal here that protects the station. And more times than not, the platform that you've been assigned to is already occupied, so you'll have to wait for the train that is currently occupying that platform to depart so you can enter the station. So I've just been making short bursts of brake step 1 just to help us come to a nice controlled stop at this signal here. We've come to a stop, so full service, neutral, and we're at a red signal, so I'm going to set the driver reminder appliance. And the speed limit falls to 20 miles an hour just on entry into London Victoria Station. It's actually fallen to 40 miles an hour. It fell to 40 miles an hour as we passed the previous signal, but I forgot to call it out. So the signal is now displaying a single yellow aspect with the number 9. That tells us that we've been routed into London Victoria platform 9. So I've reset the DRA, forward, power notch 1, then power notch 2. And we're on a severe downward gradient at the moment, so I'm going to accelerate up to 15 miles an hour. And gravity should, so I've selected off on the PBC, and gravity should take us up to 20 miles an hour. Sorry, I need to stop. I have a habit of stretching and scratching myself when I'm recording videos, which is unprofessional behavior. I do apologize. So we're just entering London Victoria Station now. Because this is a dead end platform, I'm going to reduce our speed to 15 miles an hour using a short burst of brake step 1. So yes, entry into dead end platforms is always 15 miles an hour. Even if the speed limit is above 15, you still aim to be doing 15 miles an hour when entering any dead end platform. Midway along a dead end platform, or 4 carriage lengths away from the buffer stops to be precise, you want to reduce your speed down to 10 miles an hour. So I'm just using another burst of brake step 1 to accomplish that. And a coach length away from the buffer stops, you want to be doing no faster than 5 miles an hour. So again, using another burst of brake step 1 to accomplish that. And then from here, I'm just going to be using small bursts of brake step 1 to achieve a nice controlled stop. With the buffer stops just about to exit the windscreen, that is a decent place to be stopped at. So yep, just there, that is perfect. Full service, neutral, set the DRA because we are at buffer stops, and doors are on the left. Okay, so I'm now going to turn the headlight switch into the off position, move the FNR switch into the off position, remove the master key, turn off our safety systems, And before leaving the train, I ensure that the windows are closed and ensure that the windows are closed. Oh, come on, man. Okay, one sec. Yeah, as I was saying, ensure that the windows are closed and obviously ensure that the windscreen wiper isn't on, although it hasn't been raining, so it's obviously not going to be on, but just still get into the habit of making that check. And yeah, that should be it. Just take a final glance, ensure that your master key isn't inserted before leaving the cab. And then have a glance at the train, the lights in particular, to ensure that they're displaying 2 red tail lights, which they are. So that concludes this commentary run. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I appreciate it. My commentary is starting to improve ever so slightly, bit by bit, as I get more content out over the upcoming months. You know, it will get better. This is just the beginning, and Train Sim World 4 has been announced as well. I think they announced that yesterday, which I'm very excited for. Kind of. It's going to be interesting to push out some content on that. The East Coast Main Line in particular with the Azuma 801 train. But yeah, so this service is now going to head back down the line and head towards Epsom Downs. I'm not going to be driving that right now, although I will be covering that journey in the next video. So yeah, thank you guys for watching once again, and any constructive feedback or criticism is more than welcome in the comment section below. Love.